Sir Isaac Newton invented calculus, discovered gravity, solved the mysteries of optics, generally considered the smartest human to ever live. The man looked at the entire universe and said, "Yeah, I can do the math on that." But in 1720, this absolute gigabrain lost his entire life savings buying a stock that did literally nothing but sell slaves in air. He could calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but he couldn't calculate the madness of people. This is the story of how the smartest man in history got wrecked by the oldest enemy of them all, FOMO.
Let's set the scene. It's the early 18th century in Great Britain. The vibes are weird. Everyone is wearing powdered wigs that smell like dead rodents. Hygiene is a suggestion rather than a rule, and the British government is absolutely drowning in debt. See, Britain had spent the last few decades fighting wars, because that's just what European countries did back then. It was their national pastime. But war is expensive. Britain had maxed out the national credit card, and the interest payments were eating them alive. Enter the South Sea Company. This wasn't just a company, it was a financial innovation. That's a term bankers use right before they destroy the global economy. The government made a deal. The South Sea Company would take on Britain's massive national debt. In exchange, the government would pay them interest and grant them a monopoly on trade in the South Seas, which basically meant South America. Now, on paper, this sounds amazing. South America was filled with gold, silver, and exotic goods. If you owned the monopoly on trade there, you were going to be richer than God. There was just one tiny, insignificant little stick figure problem. Spain owned South America, and Spain hated Britain. They were currently at war. The odds of Spain letting British ships dock in their ports to trade were about the same as Newton inventing a hair-defying hair gel. It wasn't going to happen. But did that matter? No. Because we aren't trading reality here, folks. We are trading vibes. The South Sea Company starts marketing itself, and they are good at it. They aren't selling cargo, they're selling the dream of cargo. They're telling people, hey, don't worry about the Spanish, we'll sort that out. Just look at all this potential gold. Enter Isaac Newton. At this point in his life, Newton isn't just a science nerd locked in a room. He's the master of the mint. He is literally the guy in charge of Britain's money. If anyone should know a financial lemon when he sees one, it's him. And at first, he plays it cool. It's early 1720. The stock is trading around 128 pounds. Newton looks at the charts, which probably looked like a squiggly line drawn by a drunk toddler, and thinks, you know what, I'll dabble. He buys in. The hype machine turns on. The directors of the South Sea Company start bribing politicians, spreading rumors, and pumping the stock. The price goes to 175 pounds, then 200 pounds. Newton, being a smart guy, looks at his portfolio. He's made a profit of 7,000 pounds. In 1720, 7,000 pounds is buy a castle and retire money. He decides to take the win. He sells his shares. He cashes out. He walked away a winner. He beat the market. He proved that a rational mind can conquer financial hysteria. If the story ended here, Newton would be a trading legend. But this is where the human brain, even a brain as big as Newton's, starts to glitch. Newton is sitting on the sidelines with his cash, feeling superior. But the stock keeps going up. It hits 300 pounds, then 400 pounds, then 500 pounds. Newton is watching his friends, people he knows are dumber than him, getting absolutely filthy rich. We're talking about people who probably thought the moon was made of cheese. They're buying fancy carriages and new wigs. They're bragging at the coffee shops. Imagine you sold Bitcoin at $10,000 and then you watched it go to $60,000. It physically hurts. It creates a specific type of nausea that sits right in the bottom of your stomach. This is the psychological torture of the sideline. By the summer of 1720, the whole country has lost its mind. It wasn't just the South Sea Company anymore. The bubble had created a mania for everything. People were launching companies for the most ridiculous things you can imagine. There was a company formed for the wheel for a perpetual motion machine, a scam. There was a company for trading in hair. Why? Who knows? There was literally a company with the prospectus, a company for carrying on an undertaking of great advantage, but nobody to know what it is.
People threw money at that. The guy raised 2,000 pounds in one morning and then immediately fled the country. Honestly, respect. But the king of them all was still the South Sea Company. It hit 700 pounds. Newton can't take it anymore. The logic center of his brain, the part that invented calculus, shuts down. The emotional lizard brain center takes the wheel. He grabs his checkbook with sweaty palms. He doesn't just buy back in, he goes all in. He takes his original capital, plus the profit he made earlier, plus everything else he has. He re-enters the market at the absolute peak of the bubble. He buys in at roughly 1,000 pounds per share. He is the exit liquidity. He is the bag holder. He looked at a vertical line on a chart and thought, yes, this will continue forever toward the sun.
August 1720. The price is wobbling. The air is thin up here. The directors of the South Sea Company, getting greedy, realized that all those other little bubble companies, the hair trading, the perpetual motion machines, were stealing capital that could be used to buy their overvalued stock. So they successfully lobbied the government to pass the Bubble Act, which made it illegal to form these sketchy joint stock companies without a royal charter. They thought this would funnel money back into the South Sea Company, but they forgot one basic rule of economics. Panic is contagious. When the government started cracking down on the smallest scams, investors got spooked. They started selling the small stocks to cover their debts. Then they realized, wait a minute, the South Sea Company doesn't actually make any money either. We haven't sent a single ship to trade with South America. We're just trading pieces of paper back and forth. The vibe shifted instantly. The selling started. At first, it was a slow trickle. The price dipped to 900 pounds. Newton probably thought, just a healthy correction, buy the dip. Then it hit 800 pounds. Diamond hands, Isaac, diamond hands. Then 700 pounds. Then the floor fell out. It wasn't a decline, it was a cliff. Everyone rushed for the exits at the same time. But in a market crash, when everyone is selling, there is no one buying. The liquidity evaporated. The directors of the company started dumping their own shares in secret, knowing the game was up. The price plummeted to 500 pounds, then 300 pounds, then back down to the dirt. Newton watched his fortune turn into a mathematical limit approaching zero. He didn't sell on the way down because he was paralyzed. He kept hoping for a bounce that never came. He held the bag all the way to the bottom. The crash of 1720 was devastating. It wasn't just rich nobles who lost money. It was maids, shopkeepers, widows. The economy of Britain ground to a halt. The Postmaster General poisoned himself. The Chancellor of the Exchequer was thrown in the Tower of London. It was absolute chaos. And Sir Isaac Newton? He lost 20,000 pounds. Now, 20,000 pounds doesn't sound like a huge amount to a modern ear. But if you adjust for inflation and purchasing power, that is roughly $3 to $4 million today. It was essentially everything he had. He spent the rest of his life living off his government salary, which was fine, he wasn't starving, but his wealth was gone. The psychological damage, however, was permanent. He was humiliated. He was the smartest man in the world, and he had fallen for the dumbest trick in the book. It drove him crazy. Legend has it that for the rest of his life, if anyone said the words South Sea in his presence, he would become visibly agitated and tell them to shut up. He banned the topic from his house. It was his trigger word. This wasn't just a financial loss, it was an ego death. He realized that intelligence has nothing to do with rationality. You can understand the physics of the universe, but that doesn't help you understand the herd mentality of a bunch of greedy apes in a coffee shop. So, what did we learn? If Sir Isaac Newton, the guy who literally wrote the book on how the physical world works, can get wrecked by buying the top of a hype bubble, you don't stand a chance. Markets aren't math, markets are emotion. And when you see a green line going straight up and your idiot neighbor is getting rich and your palms start sweating, just remember Isaac Newton. He could calculate the motions of heavenly bodies, but he couldn't calculate the madness of people. Don't be a Newton.